Vernon, Nixa, Ozark, Aurora, and Reed Spring. So far, authorities say they've been unable to determine the source of the blast. We can rule out an earthquake at this point. The last one reported anywhere near us was more than 12 hours ago near Oklahoma City.
It's not just hot out there, it's record-breaking hot. This spring was the hottest since the government began keeping records in 1895. 150 million Americans have spent some portion of the past week under a heat warning. In tiny Norton, Kansas last week, it hit 118 degrees, hotter than Death Valley.
Residents in Australia are feeling the heat as the temperature in Sydney hits a record high. The mercury rose up to 114.4 degrees in Sydney and to almost 116 degrees at the city's airport.
Well, parts of Australia are on track for a record March heat wave. National meteorologist David Brown is, of course, keeping across it. Brownie, it seems summer's not quite over for some of us.
Yeah, that's right, Beck, and good afternoon. In fact, most of southeast Australia is looking at a record heat wave for this time of year.
Australia's record-breaking heatwave is continuing to fuel outbreaks of wildfires across scores of thousands of hectares in the southeast of the country.
.165 record high temperatures in the month of June. This as we just start July. And take a look at those red dots. The fiery red dots are in the middle of all those record high temperatures that you see. The yellow ones represent the 3,000. Those red dots are the warmest temperatures ever in cities. Folks, this has never happened before. Nashville, Tennessee, 109 degrees. Atlanta, Georgia, 106. Look at Raleigh at 105. We were on pace with the temperatures that were in Saudi Arabia and deserts all over the country with some of the hottest temperatures in the world. Now, with that heat came an awful lot of storms. About 1,000 storms kicked off on Friday, and then we had 800 yesterday. Our Ginger Z's in Arlington. We're Ginger, right where you are. My family, part of the millions of folks who spent the weekend without power this morning. Good morning, Ginger.
Good morning, Sam, and good morning, everyone. This is one of so many neighborhoods, not only in Virginia, where you see trees and the power lines, a virtual minefield in the streets, but anywhere from the Carolinas to Ohio. They had round after round of severe storms, and now the extreme heat. Powerful winds up to 90 miles per hour blew through Chicago late Sunday. It came with teeming rain and hail. The storms dropped Chicago's temperature by 20 degrees quick, but did little to cool off the rest of the country, still sweating it out. This morning, at least 3 million homes are without power across 7 states. At least 14 confirmed dead, all after this powerful line of storms blew through from the Midwest to the Mid-Atlantic Friday.
Oh my God!
The storms did the usual, but did it big, taking down power lines, uprooting trees, and forcing a weekend of cleanup, with temps climbing as high as 106 degrees in Atlanta, breaking the all-time record high.
Big chill, 133 million Americans in this together. All day, these pictures were streaming into our newsroom. Wisconsin, Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C. All of us apparently doing anything we could to stay warm. Take a look at that. In fact, it was so cold today, the Great Lakes had a wind chill of minus 40, which feels colder than the North Pole.
Over 2/3 of the country, along with some weird extremes. It's expected to be 75 degrees colder in Maine this week than it was last week. 75 degrees, and this latest push of Arctic air has already made its way all the way south to Florida. NBC's Kevin Tibbles is with us from the grip of it in Chicago. Kevin, good evening.
Brian, tonight bitter cold and treacherous winds have much of the country hunkering down, and this blast of winter is likely to last through to the weekend. Frigid, treacherous, Siberian, all describe Erie, Pennsylvania.
The wind is vicious here. The wind chill is absolutely freezing.
It is so cold in parts of the UK right now, even the sheep are shivering. Farmers struggle with conditions far colder than they're used to in March. With lambing season here, they are losing livestock fast.
Because I'm probably at least 60 years have gone. As far as the lambs are concerned, well, that could be in the hundreds.
Power cables are down. Thousands have been without electricity in areas of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. This has been the coldest March for 50 years.
Polar scientists are trying to work out whether shrinking sea ice is linked to record cold temperatures in Britain and Northern Europe.
Take a look at this amazing satellite picture of the blizzard of 2013. You can see why this snowstorm paralyzed some of the most heavily populated areas of this country. The stats are now coming in, and they are very impressive. The worst hit town, Hamden, Connecticut, where they got an astonishing 40 inches. It was a record breaker in Portland, Maine, a place used to snowstorms. They got nearly 32 inches from this one. And to give you a sense of the power of this storm, the winds were as strong as a Category 1 hurricane with gusts up to 83 miles an hour on the Cape. That's Cape Cod. And speaking of Massachusetts, that's where meteorologist Ginger Z is this morning. She's in Boston. Hey, Ginger, good morning.
Good morning to you, Dan. You know, Boston was one of the areas hardest hit and record-making here. It was the 5th largest snowfall on record.
Overnight, the snowstorm intensified, blanketing parts of Long Island under more than a foot of snow.
Okay, go. Push it. Go.
Cars stranded on the Long Island Expressway were stopped dead in their tracks by road conditions.
Urgent now, and just in, a magnitude 6.2 earthquake has just struck in Guatemala, only about 6 miles to the southeast of its capital city. That's according to the U.S. Geological Survey. Keep in mind, experts warn a magnitude 6 quake could trigger significant damage to cities and other very populated areas.
An earthquake struck Mexico this morning. The U.S. Geological Survey said a magnitude 5.5 earthquake hit the southwest of Pinotepa Nacional, the Pacific coast of Mexico. Less than 10 minutes later, a second quake hit with magnitude 5.1.
It was about 230 miles southeast of Mexico City. So, as we saw in some of the video that's coming online now, the early warning system there in Mexico was able to alert people that some shaking was on its way. Video showed swaying of buildings, thousands of people evacuating out into the streets.
Of the quake. Buildings damaged across a wide area. The quake struck at just before 8 o'clock in the morning, local time. The force of it made the earth move at up to 10 centimeters per second.
Survivors are still being found and rescued 2 days and a night after this earthquake hit. Thousands of soldiers with military helicopters that are now ambulances taking the injured out. The death toll appears to have stopped rising significantly, but there are an alarming number of wounded.
Is still recovering from Superstorm Sandy. It killed 147 people and left $50 billion in damage. A new forecast warns this year's hurricane season could be even worse. Professor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at the City University of New York. He's also a CBS This Morning contributor. Good morning.
Morning.
So how worried should we be about this season's forecast?
Well, this is a wake-up call. As Yogi Berra once said, it's deja vu all over again. We're going to be hitting hurricane season in 2 more months. And this new report from Colorado State University says there's a 72% chance of a major hurricane hitting the United States this season, a 50% increase in the frequency and number of these hurricanes compared to the 1980s and 1990s. This could be maybe a new normal. And we have to be prepared for Hurricane Sandy 2.0.
An incredible story about something most people will never see. 4 different lightning strikes in the same spot. Sam Sweeney spent the day with those who saw it and has the unbelievable video.
They say lightning never strikes twice in the same spot, but how about 4 times?
It's definitely the closest I've ever seen a lightning strike.
This surveillance video caught everything on tape. Lieutenant Jay Kircher says he and his crew were sitting in the operations center when they heard the crack and then saw 4 lightning bolts come down and make a meteor-like hole right in the center of the tarmac.
Look at this. You can see multiple lightning bolts here, right? Well, scientists had just discovered that lightning isn't always visible. It's this phenomenon called dark lightning, and apparently it's just as powerful.
If you get hit by a dark lightning strike, you won't die. At least not immediately, because it's a radiation strike, not a lightning or bolt strike. And the main way that you would ever get hit by this is if you're flying through a thunderstorm. Now, most airplanes fly around the storms, so there's no real risk. But if your plane gets hit by one of these dark lightning strikes, it's about 1 out of 1,000 strikes would be a dark strike. You would see maybe a small purple haze around the plane, and you would get a lifetime supply of radiation in less than 1 second.
First images from Florida of that cavernous sinkhole that swallowed a home and a young man in his bedroom. And ABC's Gio Benitez shows us he is there.
This is our first look at the massive sinkhole that swallowed up 37-year-old Jeff Bush while sleeping in his bed. Look closer. Authorities tell ABC News the sinkhole, about 30 feet wide and 100 feet deep, could well extend underneath the 2 neighboring homes.
See with the tops of his bed. I didn't see nothing else, so I jumped in the hole and tried digging him out. And I couldn't get him. All I could hear was, I thought I could hear him screaming for me and hollering for me to help me. I couldn't do nothing.
The hole inside this house kept expanding around.